Do you sometimes feel that there's this little skeptical voice inside that instead of reassuring you is telling you that things may be going wrong, that you should be on the lookout, that is urging you to do things that you somehow know aren't going to be helpful? Do you sometimes have a sense that you're sort of sabotaging for yourself and find this confusing? Well, if so, welcome to this video, because this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. This is a common situation that can be really puzzling, because again, it seems like part of our brain is sort of working against us. It can be quite frustrating. Things that I often hear from clients, followers, students are things like, I feel I'm sabotaging for myself, or something like this. It's like part of me doesn't want to believe that I'm fine. And we're going to look at two examples of this, and then I'm going to give you an outline of today's class. But basically, what I find often is something like this, that a client has found that they've slept easier, and they know that this is because they've actually abandoned effort. They've been trying less to achieve sleep, but then they find that the brain says something like, maybe it's a fluke, maybe this isn't real, something like that, that skeptical voice again. Or someone has found that they slept easier, and they know because they haven't been paying so much attention or monitoring or keeping track, but they still have that, say that I have this strong urge to go on Google, although I know that's not hasn't been helping me. Like, again, it can be so tricky because we feel like we're sort of like our brain is sending us towards the direction where we know isn't helpful for us. So we're going to see in today's class, we're going to see why this happens. We're going to go deep into why this happens. So I hope it's like crystal clear, and then see how we can meet the situation, what to do. So yeah, let's start, of course, with why this happens. And I want to start by sharing this, that there are two types of errors that the brain can commit. There may be other things in other circumstances, but for our purposes, for the practical purposes of understanding kind of the safety behaviors of our brain, there are these two type of errors that the brain can commit that we'll talk about. And by the way, if this sounds familiar to you, we have talked about the type 2 errors. I think it was more than a year ago, actually, but in a little bit of a different context, and not in the kind of self-sabotaging context. So I hope this is new to long-time followers, and or this is something new to for everyone. Here's what I want to try to say. Anyway, so these two type of errors are the type 1 error and the type 2 error. And what are these? Well, a type 1 error is believing that something believing something to be a problem when it isn't. And by the way, if you're wondering like what's this type 1 and type 2 thing, well, this all comes from like academia and like statistical analysis. So these are not concepts that I have made up, but borrowed rather. So anyway, type 1 error is believing something to be a problem when it isn't. And a type 2 error is believing something not to be a problem when it actually is. And if this is kind of confusing to you, I have I think a perfect analogy, perfect like story to make this very, very clear. It is the story of Peter and the wolf. And I bet most of you are going to be very familiar with the story, but if anybody isn't, the story goes that Peter was this little shepherd boy who was responsible for taking care of all the sheep of his village. And he got bored, and he was out in this meadow, and he got bored, and he shouted, "Wolf, there's a wolf!" And the villagers heard him, and they were scared, and they ran up to him, and they said, "Where's the wolf?" And he's like, "Haha, I was just kidding." Then they go back, and he does the same thing again. But then finally, there actually is a wolf. And now Peter goes like, "Wolf, wolf," and the villagers are like, "Nah, we know he's just fooling around." And it doesn't end well for Peter. It's kind of that's how the story ends there. So the villagers in the story, they committed a type 1 error 2 times. 2 times they heard him cry wolf, and they believed there was a wolf. They committed the error of believing there was a problem when there actually wasn't. They committed a type 1 error 2 times. Now they committed a type 2 error once, when he shouted wolf, and there was actually wolf, but they didn't believe him. They committed a type 2 error because they believed there wasn't a problem when there actually was a problem, right? So that's type 1 and type 2 errors. So I want to add one more thing about type 1 errors, and that is that insomnia is a type 1 error. A type 1 error. Insomnia is when the brain has started to believe that being awake is dangerous, that it's a threat to us when it isn't. So insomnia is actually a type 1 error, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about type 2 errors. Because here's the thing, that skeptical voice we have inside our brain, the quote-unquote self-sabotaging, the urge towards safety behaviors like Googling, that we know create struggle, this is an expression of our brain not wanting to commit a type 2 error. It is scared of committing a type 2 error. Our brain is scared of quote unquote missing something. It's afraid of saying like, oh, there is afraid of completely committing to, oh, there isn't a problem. There's nothing we need to worry about. It is afraid of, committing a type 2 error where it believes there's absolutely nothing to worry about when there actually was something to worry about. That's where this all comes from. Now, in reality, in the context of like insomnia and sleep, we cannot actually commit a type 2 error because there is no wolf, there is no threat, there is no danger. A type 2 error cannot be committed, but it takes a while for the brain to see that. And until it has fully seen that, it may be a little bit worried of committing this type 2 error, and we may have that kind of skeptical voice, the voice that's urging us not to kind of dismiss, the sense of danger. So I hope this made it very clear why this happens, and then we can move on to the second section here: what to do. Well, when you hear this and you digest this and you see that, aha, my brain is like, just doesn't want to commit this type 2 error, then the idea can become like, okay, I just have to fully convince it. I have to forcefully, fully convince it that there really is no problem. I have to make it see that, which doesn't really work, because it's sort of like, when we have a friend who we know has an idea that isn't true, but the more we try to convince them and make them see that, the more they just become scared and threaten and be like, oh no, what's going on? Like, and they hold on to their idea even more. And same thing kind of internally, when part of our brain is kind of scared and cautious, and we just tell it like, don't be scared, stop being scared. Then it's just more threatening to it. And it's like, oh, I'm feeling forced to change something here. Maybe I shouldn't. It's like we cannot force that. Rather, it is like understanding why our brain sometimes seemingly wants to send us towards struggle, and responding to this with like detached awareness. This helps. And with detached awareness, I mean something like this, like, we have that skeptical voice, that's what feels like self-sabotaging, and we go like, okay, I see where this comes from. I see where this idea to Google comes from. I see where this skepticism comes from. And it's sort of like going, thanks, brain, for having my back. Detached, and unaware like that. And what happens then is that when we approach things like we approach kind of our internal landscape in this peaceful way with peaceful means, then that leads to peaceful sleep. Awareness just leads to the entire struggle fading away, thanks to understanding and self-kindness and courage, etc. So this was I hope really helpful to you. I hope this clarifies things and make things easier for you. And if you do feel that you are on that path where things are getting easier, sleep happens easier, you're feeling like yourself, thanks to the free content and you contextualizing, that is wonderful. Please let us know. Share this with us. And on the flip side, if you think, if you're feeling that things are a bit tricky, or you feel maybe isolated, it feels lonely, you're not quite sure how our teaching fits to your situation, and you would like that contextualized for you, then please head over to our website, check out our coaching options. And if you decide to join, we look forward to seeing you on the other side. That said, hope, again, this was helpful. Let me know in the comment section what you thought, and I look forward to having you back real soon. Until then, stay out of trouble.